Yeah, you're on, Chair.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I'm Rory Vaughan, Chair of the Economy, Arts, Sports and the Public Realm Policy and Accountability Committee. And before we start, a few housekeeping points. As you'll know, the meeting has been live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, and by participating you are consenting to be recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, fire exits are located in the lift lobby. Head down the stairs and out front entrance. And as always, please, very grateful if officers could introduce themselves before speaking for the first time. And actually, the microphones are the things in the centre rather than the ones that you should have. We haven't received any apologies for absence, unless there's anything else. Have we heard from the Councillor?
We haven't, Chair, but I assume we've had apologies from Councillor Drake and Simon as it's not present.
Okay. And do members have any declarations of interest? Okay. First of all, do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November 2025 is an accurate record? Thank you. There was one item that I have received an update on, which I will just return to briefly, which is around officers investigating the use of South Park by St Thomas's School and reporting back to the committee. The response from the officer is they do use South Park. This is for general PE lessons for pupils such as netball and cricket. They also use Hurling Park. They book the use of the parks to the H&F sports booking team. So we can share that as necessary as well, but that's just to give you that action point. So, moving on to our, as you know, we've got two items and then we will be having a budget item later in the meeting. So item number 4 is the culture update. And the report updates the committee, as you know, on the delivery of activities by the Council and the Cultural Compact in support of the cultural strategy, where culture connects, which we've talked about several times at this forum. And I think Val Birchall, Assistant Director of Culture, Tourism and Sport, is going to present. Not all to say. Yeah. Thank you, Ken. Before we start, let me ask our congratulations on the committee for your recent honour. We're delighted to hear about that, and no doubt that clearly very well deserved. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So is that what you want to say?
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I'm Val Birchall, Assistant Director of Culture, Tourism and Sport. Thanks, Kelly. I've put a lot of detail in the report, so I'm not going to go through every little tiny bit of activity, but I'm going to try and pick out things which I think are the most significant of how they relate to the cultural strategy. As you said, Chair, you're aware of the Cultural Compact, which is the delivery board for the strategy. The strategy itself is under these 3 themes, underpinned by the principle of working collectively with our cultural sector partners, private sector and voluntary sector to deliver the activity. So we have these three subgroups which reflect the themes of the strategy, and those partnerships comprise private sector partners, hotels, hospitality and retail businesses, the education sector, higher and further education and cultural education professionals, and the voluntary sector, cultural and community and not-for-profit organisations. The Destination Management Partnership and the Creative Pathways Partnership are both formally constituted, and work on the Heritage and Inclusion Partnership is at an earlier stage and is focused largely on the Black History Project, which I've talked about before, so I'm not going to go into that so much today. So council officers are working to deliver the foundation actions of the strategy in order to support the compact with the delivery of the programme. Thank you, Kelly. So on the Destination Partnership Management Partnership, which is called Visit H&F, that meets regularly and has commissioned work recently on a destination plan that will support the 3 pillars of destination, which are the development of tourism product for the market, the promotion of tourism, and the management of the visitor experience when visitors get here. It's very much looking at the visitor economy opportunities and how we optimise the contribution of the visitor economy locally. So the activities that have been delivered just since in recent months, we've conducted our second Christmas marketing campaign. I know I talked about the Christmas campaign last year. This year we focused on West is Best, which was a theme that the partners were keen to support, the idea that this would be a great place to come to retain local residents, friends and family visitors, and the wider London visitor market. The campaign was promoted across the partner channels, and partners provided the prizes for the sign-ups through the social media campaign, and I think it was a successful campaign. In fact, I'll come on to the outcome in a second. Alongside that marketing campaign, though, importantly, we don't just have the promotion; we also have the product. We don't have the product promotion is limited, and if we have the promotion but the product doesn't stand up, we also don't make the optimum contribution. So we've had the coordination this year of the Christmas lighting, which has been which we haven't really done in the same way before. So we've done a bit more coordination with partners. It's quite difficult because obviously some of the lighting is done by communities. They have their own idea what they want to do, and there's a lot of negotiating about that. But we've tried as far as we could to coordinate lighting schemes and switch on events in key areas. So as a result of that, the total visitor footfall increased by 1 million visits in the year to the beginning of December, and in fact, Q4 of 2025 was the highest footfall we've had since we started collecting the data in 2022. So it shows a good rebound on the visitor market itself. But unfortunately, total visitor spend actually declined compared year on year. And that's because we think because of the cost of living pressures that people are experiencing. But it's vital that we focus not just on the numbers of people coming here, but also what they do and how they spend when they're here, because otherwise we don't get the total value. So lastly, on the destination side, we're starting to work with the boat race and other sporting partners about a campaign for the summer of sport. We've obviously got a lot of really good, strong sports content, also sports partners locally. Thanks, Kelly. So you'll see there, you can see some of the partners in the circle, a bit small, sorry. And on the right-hand side, the West is Best campaign and the footfall chart. You might notice there's a little peak at the end of 2023. That seems to have just been a bit of a rebound that's peaked there, and the general trajectory is strongly upwards. So hopefully we can just see that as a bit of an anomaly that month. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Kelly. So creativity, obviously hugely important in the borough, and particularly linking with the upstream London opportunities and the innovation agenda. So the Creative Pathways Partnership is very much bringing together not just the council services for young people and adult learners, but also the education specialists in the cultural sector and the private sector partners further in higher education. The partnership has submitted an application to the Arts Council for some funding to continue to develop its activities over the next couple of years, which we should hear about early next month. And if we are successful, we'll have an expansion of last year's successful pilot of Schools Art Week, which I think Council Lang attended some of those events. And the scheme for young people to propose cultural activities in their local neighbourhoods, and a programme of creative careers pathways support in conjunction with local employers. You just skip on, Kelly. Thank you. So these are the activities that we've been delivering through the King's Coronation Youth Fund, which you'll see in the appendix. Those are the projects that have been funded. And we have had, we will have by the time that we finish delivering it, 4,500 children and young people taking part, many of whom are young people with disabilities. We've got volunteering hours, which are really vital to making the programme succeed. And importantly, every young person who's part of that programme has some kind of recognition or accreditation. So they receive some kind of certificate. It might be a formal qualification, or it might just be an acknowledgement. And we've got there more than 100 artists and also more than 100 shadow artists, who are young people who are being paid to work alongside established artists to develop their skills. And then I just put in a couple of images there, Schools Art Week last year, and also some activities in the library, just to show the kind of diversity of activity. Great, thank you. So on the inclusion, again, we've got some key reasons why we're focusing on inclusion. They're captured in the strategy. They're to do with supporting communities to celebrate their culture, providing opportunities for people to experience activities which they think are relevant, developing a volunteering approach, and growing the reputation and prominent presence for Black history. So in the report, I've mentioned a few activities there that we've undertaken, and I don't know, Kelly, can you just go on to the next one? Just put some pictures in there so you can, I know you come to a lot of these events, all of you, so you're familiar with these images. So we had a very successful BE Day, 80th anniversary. We had archived photographs of local street parties, civic celebration records, and a lot of activities for people to take part in, from historical impersonations to people's own stories about their experiences in the war. And we also had a range of other things which I've detailed in the report there, so you can see some of those activities there, the Pride Festival, and the Black History Month on the right-hand side at the bottom, a bit small, but I know you know about the banners that we put up, and the refugee event there as well. So working together, which is obviously an important part of the whole process, these are the things which officers are working on at the moment, and were part of the foundation actions from the strategy. So creating the evidence base and the needs assessment, come on to that in a minute, looking at how we can collectively resource the programme with our partners and doing some fundraising, and then of course planning the activities, delivering and measuring the impact and the outcomes. So we're involved at the moment in 3 sets of research activities. The top one, the Cultural Vitality Lab, is a project with the National Centre for Cultural Value, and it's looking at how do we measure the vibrancy of culture in local neighbourhoods, everyday culture. And it's we are one of 3 pilot projects nationally looking at that. The second one, the Joint Cultural Needs Assessment, is an Arts Council developed framework which mirrors the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment that the Council is mandated to undertake. And that looks at what data have we got and how can we use the data for health or for employment or for skills to think about what kind of cultural activities should we deliver. And then the third one is Creative Ecology Map, which we are undertaking with UCL and University of the Arts, and that is trying to map the creative sector locally with the sort of connections with local people and particularly the education sector. Other things that are going on, I've listed some of them in the paper. Obviously, there's a lot of activities in libraries. I know you're aware of that. I've just left Shepherd's Bush Library earlier. There was an activity just about to start. We've got public art activities going on, so some commissions and some support for projects. There's programming work going on to prepare for Civic Campus. We've got film locations and film tourism activity. Film locations actually raises quite a significant amount of money for the council, including in other departments. So you'll see in the report we've had everything from feature films to commercials and streaming, and in that we have achieved income of around about £75,000 for other services and about £100,000 for the events budget. So that's quite a big piece of work there. Commercial events, markets, fairs and entertainment, which draws in funding and income from other users. Then we've had 125 third-party bookings across our parks and open spaces in the last year. And we've got a project going on for civic innovation, which is bringing together the artists with people working in the policy team in the council and academics to think about how can artists bring their creative perspectives to help solve the kinds of policy issues that we're interested in. So it's a bit of an experimental project. We've also done a lot of activities, of course, across different communities. So we've done work with the West London Queer Project, the Refugee Team, the Joy Disability Festival, the Polish Social and Cultural Association, Bulgarian Folk Fair, and lots of other groups as well. So in summary, We've got these things are coming. Talked about some of them already, but in summary, we actually have quite high levels of participation in culture in the borough. We've got 95% of people engaging with the arts in person, which is very high. And we've got very high levels of employment in the cultural and creative sector, with 18% of employees in that sector. And those sectors account for about 30% of GVA in the borough. So there is an important sector for us. And of course, that connection between creativity, culture, an attractive place to live, and the local economy. So hopefully that's given you some tour. It's like a whistle-stop tour because there's a lot going on. So apologies for that.
No, thank you very much. I think that was punchy, but in many ways also comprehensive. Councillor Lang.
Right, yes, I'm Councillor Allocated Lang, I'm Councillor of Brook Green, but I've also actually got a small role when I lead member for Culture and Arts. Can I just say, I think you presented a very positive, very rich, and can I say quite a deep cultural aspect to the borough. And I'm just reminded, I was in the library, Hammersmith Library, not that long ago. They do very good displays in there, by the way. And I was reading about local history, and I was reading, and I didn't really know much about the Great White City of 1908, and then the Olympics that came after it. They had, I wrote down, they had the Palace of Music, the place for arts, and so on. Fantastic buildings. I'm aware of that from the streets and the names, because I live in there. I just wonder whether we could journey into that actually at some point in the future, because that was a significant event in London and a significant event in Hammersmith. But just go back, I've got a couple of questions and a couple of observations. First of all, can you just, I think you did explain it actually, but this Civic Innovation Lab.
Yes.
What is that again?
So it's a project, we're just starting this project with colleagues in higher education, and the idea is to look at how the essence of creativity, which artists obviously possess, how that can be used to think a bit more laterally about how could we solve some of the issues that we can see in society. So that it's just trying to look at the skills of creativity, which I'm sure you're aware of, the kinds of things that people do when they are being creative. How could we tap into that? We've got a lot of creative and cultural people in the borough, and we could use that to bring a different perspective to some of the challenges that we've got in society. So we're trying to identify artists, work with policy colleagues, and work with some of the HE professionals to just test a few things. We can involve some young people in that. We're just in the early stages of that.
Can I just make a couple of comments? The BE Day celebrations were very good.
Thank you.
I thought across the borough, very important. And also, I was very pleased to see we had DJ Day anniversary, because I remember my father, he was in the 14th Army and forgotten Army. But I just thought that was quite interesting. I actually was invited because of Burn Star Association to an event, which actually Joanna was speaking at, to do with that. And we always read out the Kahima epitaph at the Remembrance Day. So it's not actually mentioned in your thing. It says BE Day. Could you just put VJ as well? Because there are people in the community. I know the event took place up in the Japanese Gardens I was talking about earlier. And there are quite a lot of the community from different parts of the world that do recognise that. And I was not lobbied exactly, but I was asked about that, and I just said we were doing something. So
we definitely did it.
Just add that to it. It's the National Year of Reading. Yeah, so I'm pleased to see that we're doing something on that. I think that's very, very important. And sometimes people think about that with young people, but I think there's quite a lot of big illiterate adults. I'm surprised at the number actually, still in this country. So I think that's a great opportunity. The other thing I just mentioned, I know you're doing it, is the opportunities for the use of the campus. I think I know that's been talked about, but as and when that partially opens or opens, I think there are some great opportunities. And probably not talking too much yet, but I've just had a meeting this morning to do with the Olympic development because it's in my ward. But if you take Olympian and walk all the way down to the city campus, that makes a fantastic opportunity. I know that others think that as well for the future. You know, the Irish Centre, Polish Centre, where there's a brilliant event last week to do with the Holocaust. So it's just to sort of flag that. I know you're talking about that. I just think it would be good to hear more about that. And then finally, I just want to mention the Black History Month from May. And it really, it's not a month. It goes on, as Councillor Umo said, the council in the last week, 365 days a year. But I went to a few events there, and I was really positive about it. And so, with the people that were there, if I can just indulge, I went to an event at Fulham Palace where they unveiled a tapestry.
Yeah.
Right? Council was there, and I was speaking to somebody afterwards. I said, "What was a bus stop who come from Croydon to come back because he was involved in that." But he spoke about the image that we were presenting as a council about that inclusiveness, and he said he was very inspired by it. And the other thing is that those banners that we put up to do with names. Again, I went to an event to do with that, and I think it was the great grandson, or not the grandson, Fanny. He come all the way down. Yeah, Brian Eaton. He come all the way down with his wife, Yorkshire. And I think you managed to capture him, and he's actually on Hammersmith for the website speaking. He's just brought out a book about it. And I just want to say that he was eulogising about the council because Fanny had been buried in an unmarked grave with 7 others in 1924 in the Marlborough Cemetery. And the council has worked with him and others to put a fitting tribute to her because she was a very important person in that era. And he was, again, full of praise for what we were doing locally. You know, we can do more, we all know that. But I just thought I'd just share those with the committee because it's easy sometimes to just think these things happen. But it's the way they happen. I'll go back to that word deep. They seem to be deep within what we're trying to do here. Obviously, we can improve. I'm not saying we're perfect, but I just wanted to pick up on those celebrations. But I'll just go back to that last point. I think the civic campus is an opportunity which we mustn't miss. Sorry. So we can move on, but I think unless you wanted to respond to it.
No, I've made note of all those. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the comments so far. I think it's very, it's a well presented report. It includes the things that you would hope would be there and some little innovative, which I think is impressive. So well done on that. And hopefully we can actually see some of these actually in the sort of the realm, so to speak, that we can actually go and participate with some of these things. Just a couple of comments. Where you sort of mentioned about the lighting of the Christmas trees and everything else. Now, I understand why it would be a nice idea to have these all done together. What I would say is there is a very, very large disparity in the standard of the various trees. And to be honest, I usually go to the one in Parsons Green, and on my occasions I go to one in Fulham town. But I have to say it was the most underwhelming tree lighting I think I've ever seen in my life. And I think we're missing out on something there. While I accept, business community is involved and everything else, I think we could maybe be more proactive in suggesting that maybe we look at some of our, say, German or Scandinavian residents to see how they present that sort of event, because they do it very, very well. And we could have stalls that actually would reflect Christmas, what it means to people, and get more people involved in it. But I think that's something we could improve on. And just on that, because I have to say I'm very pro-Christmas. I love it. It's my favourite time of the year. What I also notice is that we are lacking in that sense of having lights that, unless it's in Fulham Broadway, the tree that's still got lights on it, I think looks fabulous just there. But we don't have any on Fulham Palace Road. We don't have any, we go about 100 metres or so from Broadway. We then go Fulham Road. They're all down the other end. It's as though you go from light into darkness. Now, there's something very positive, very upbeat about lights, but we just stop. And whether we need to engage with the community more on business, say, would you be prepared to make a contribution towards that? Because it does make a difference to how people do things. It's a family time, it's a positive time, but if we're going to go from light to dark, I mean, you could turn the television on for that if you really wanted to see it. So we could do better there, because actually we could then have those displays from maybe some of our businesses that would be prepared to do it. Maybe young people make a contribution, because we are lacking a little bit in that. And the other, that would follows in too. These are only really things to note, maybe you could work on. It's actually a boat race, because as far as I can see, it's probably the largest single event we have in the borough, and I'm absolutely delighted it's in my ward. And I think overall we do a very good job. We do not contribute enough to advertising, to create the environment of saying this is an international sporting event. We are very lucky to have it here. We are lucky to have it on our doorstep. We need to do more. You go to the Putney side of the river, there are banners up, there are flowers up, there are stalls up, and we've got Bishop's Park. What we have is fine, but we need more. Now, whether that means communication with the colleges at Oxbridge and say, why don't each one of you have a stall for your particular college? And they can produce whatever they do. And that would bring more money in, but it would actually bring people into the park with some real food, not just food also that is very limited. We've got a great venue. We've got a great sport. Let's help market it better and showcase our borough, because we could do better there. Mm-hmm. So, otherwise, I think it's a very, very impressive report. There are a number of other things, but I think, to be honest, those are probably the highlights, and some of them have already been answered. Anyway, this is a difficult question, and I hope now I'm going to phrase it the right way or comment. I totally agree with the idea that VJ Day should be noted and supported, as well as VE Day, because there are a lot of Commonwealth people in the borough, and I think that would be appropriate. I noticed on your page, point 16, I think it is, you said there was strong presence of underrepresented groups during the war, including Black and Commonwealth people. But I wasn't sure whether that was Black, Commonwealth, then we go to LGBT soldiers. So I wasn't sure whether they were saying everyone, or you put the two together. It just didn't read particularly, it wasn't quite what I was expecting to read.
Okay, shall I just...
yeah, that's all. I mean,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think, sorry if it wasn't expressed very well, but I think the essence of it was that we tried to create a presence at the event for all kinds of people who contributed to the war effort. So probably the punctuation and the way I'm looking at it.
So it is actually Black and Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's very much, and I just wanted to clarify. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with that. So well done. Are we getting a copy of your slides? Yes, it is. Fabulous. Thank you.
I'll just comment. Mark Rosebeck, Director of Public Realm, just to comment on a couple of the points Councill's made. First one, in terms of the Christmas tree decorations, and as you'll know, we work closely with the businesses and resident associations and our contractors to try and persuade and encourage investment into the lights, and we've been doing that. I think we probably started about February last year to do that. We had a sort of long run of this year to last Christmas to try and get things as coordinated and pushed as much as possible. I think we'd always like to see more, but the reality is that we sort of run up against how much businesses are willing to sort of put in and residents can raise. and how much our contractors are able to contribute. And we do twist arms and beg and borrow. I mean, we particularly were, we sort of pushed hard on the Christmas trees. We, not Parsons, but in Shepherd's Bush, we had a particularly woeful Christmas tree last year, and we bent arms to get something at least 20 plus foot high this year to make it a lot more appropriate for the space. And so, yes, I think we'd all like to see a lot more in the way of lighting, and we'll continue to work on that. And we're just about to finish our project on Hammersmith flyover, where we've got the lighting underneath that, which will also help to bring that space to light as well.
Was that last night?
Sorry?
Was that last night you were testing lights or something?
We might want to be testing.
Because there was a lot of notice on next door saying what was going on with all these different coloured lights. I thought, it's very Christmassy. It's not.
So not formally turned on, but I think there's possibly some testing going on. And yes, they can be turned into different colours, so we can make them particularly festive around the Christmas time of year. So, but yeah, so on that particular point, yes. And then in terms of the boat race, I mean, we do meet with the chief executive and the others of the boat race on a fairly regular basis, and are looking to try and maximise the opportunity there, and particularly sort of promoting with businesses. We're working with them and joining them with our teams as how we promote the event more broadly in order to create a bit more of a weekend of it rather than just a boat race day. And that's something which they're very keen on as well, because it's something which they don't earn any money out of because it's a non-ticketed event, but and we want to, from our perspective, want to create it more than just a couple of hours of event. We want to try and benefit the economy as much as possible. So I don't know whether you want to add a bit more.
Well, I need to say that the boat race marketing director attends the destination partnership. She's been coming for about a year, and that's how we've come to this sort of summer of sport with the boat race kicking it off. But I think there's always more that we can do. The rowing is quite, because I think a lot of people go down to the river, we're trying to also make sure that they stay and they do other things and they can see what they can do by creating a bit more, as you say, a sort of festival feeling.
Yeah, as long as it's in keeping, because it is Bishop's Park, and we have to be mindful of the fact that it is a listed park as to what's there. So could I put in a request in advance that we do not, I understand the extension, I think that makes eminent sense because people are already there, so you want to keep them there as long as you can, so to speak, spend money. But what I would suggest is that we do not go down the route of having things like fun fairs there, because they damage the fabric of the park and it costs us more money as a council to repair and maintain what has been damaged. So if we can steer clear of that, that would be really helpful because it's not usually something that's been encouraged in the park.
Yeah, certainly not discussed, not even thought about, but noted.
That's all right. Thank you very much.
Chair, I think that's things which need to be said have already been said. But as Councillor Lamb highlighted, this for the local authority does actually contribute to public space. You have there's several events which are world class. Apart from the Oxford Olympic boat race, there's a Queen's tennis tournament a week before Wimbledon. There's a hurling boat match which is again important fixture. And of course, we have some first class football teams in the borough as well. But apart from that, I would like to congratulate the council, especially on organising more smaller events. There was the London Painting Patch on Castle Street, which I thought was wonderful. The amount of young children who used to come there and enjoy themselves, that was great. At Christmas time, for the first time, apart from the lights on the park, there was a Christmas tree, which again was very welcome. And I'm glad that we got away from the event which we played last year, which was to put an alpine ski drinking place there. Completely unnecessary because there's 3 parts of the green already, and adding a 4th is actually not. But congratulations, well done. Just 2 questions for really. Firstly, at paragraph 27, the borough is an established film location. It'd be nice to know what sort of income we actually get from that and how the sporting events. And secondly, in paragraph 28, the events engages with a whole host of organisations, including the West London Queer Project, the Refugee Team, the Joy Disability Festival, the Polish Social and Cultural Association, Bulgarian Folk Fair, and many others. The only omission is, and again, I'm not sure, Chair, that is deliberate or not, it doesn't mention engagement with the silent minority, the Indians and the Muslim groups. Perhaps that can be clarified as well.
Yeah, sorry. So there's a couple of comments over, but I think you mentioned some income. I don't know.
Yes, I think about it in terms of the income.
The income from filming, well, it's around about 100,000 that comes in from filming. And that includes money which is raised, which pays for street closures and things like that. So there's about 75,000 goes into the highways and parking to reflect that. So it's, but I mean, I suppose the value of it is also getting the borough seen. Potentially, if we can increase the number of local crew and people working on the films, that would be ideal as well. So, but it is primarily an income generating activity for us.
So the other point was the engagement with the Asian and the Indian.
Yes, and of course we did as yes, of course we can include some examples of where we're doing that. Of course, apologies.
Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to make two further quick points. Schools arts week, but we are intending to continue with that. Because I spoke to a head teacher that said that was absolutely fantastic at that time of the year in their primary schools, because obviously they started taking their stats. So I don't know whether with the lyric, whether that could be expanded upon, but that's just a question. Then the last thing I was going to say is upstream London. It's how do we fit this whole dynamic culture, because it provides jobs, it provides training, it provides opportunities, and it provides wealth to communities you just said. So to dovetail that into the next stage of that development, I think it's very important because it does provide an enormous amount of jobs, and if we can secure those jobs and expand upon them in this area, I think that would be a benefit too.
I agree in terms of the upstream. I think the whole report, which highlights everything that's been achieved culturally within the borough, supports the upstream London initiative, because it's about creating the kind of place where people want to come and visit, stay, and the nighttime economy, the visitor economy. It's all of those elements are in what has been presented here and what's being delivered in the programme. So, as you said, there's always possibility to do more, and of course we're looking for opportunities to do more all the time. But it's certainly a very important part of promoting this borough, and the upstream vision sits very squarely within that.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I think that's where the creative pathways work, which is looking at, we know that there are opportunities in the local economy for people who have the right skills, and we're trying through the Creative Pathways Partnership to marry up the opportunities with local people and to ensure that those skills are available locally so that the jobs are filled by local residents. The other part of that, of course, is that creativity is what's in demand in the new economy. So the more we can do around creative education and cultural education, the better equipped we are as a place to take advantage of that. On the Schools Art Week specifically, that was largely fundraised for, and so of course we will do our best. The intention is to carry on, and actually the organisations that funded it were very supportive. So hopefully we can continue. If we get the funding that I referred to earlier, we will be able to do it and expand on it, and hopefully we'll have some opportunity to do it, to have a bit of a plan for the next couple of years rather than fundraising on an annual basis.
Thanks very much. So, from my own perspective, thank you also for the immense amount of work that's gone into all this. We we've discussed it a few times at this committee. What I think has become, so the development over time, I think is clearer because of the sort of streams of work that are clearly more defined now than I think they were in the last time that we talked about them. So I think that's very clear. The problem of trying to digest some of this is that you've done so much, I think, which I think we're all grateful for, and I think is driving the borough forward. And I think the illustration, as we've discussed several times here, about the interlinkage with upstream is clear in that some of it is about providing entertainment opportunities for those people who are now comes, the 17,000 whatever it is extra people who are potentially working in the borough to have opportunities to go to theatre or other events that are taking place. So there's culture that they want to be a part of. I guess some of that as well will be interesting in seeing, I suppose, with the upstream pathway bond, whether some of the creative industries in particular that we've talked about also provide some opportunities for people, as you were mentioning. Clearly, local people can get some of those skills, and there's a local economy of employees that people can employ in some of what's going on. That would be great. 2 or 3 things. Sorry, I should also say, I thought that the list of activities that come through the King's Coronation Youth Fund was extremely impressive, very diverse. And I think actually one of the things that jumps out of this is that and actually illustrated in the report, the diversity of stuff going on. So it reflects the diversity of the borough, and is obviously giving, adding other examples into that is clearly reflecting on that. But to come to a couple of questions perhaps, or a couple of points. I was interested in the footfall increase, and obviously although the output in terms of spending at the market. I wondered 2 things on that. One is what response has been to business from, had they seen the direct link between the campaign that come on and the increased footfall maybe it would increase spending, was sort of one question. And I think the second question was, in terms of destination, how much we've got to we have talked to this committee before about seeing potentially our Shepherd's Bush, Hammersmith and Fulham and presenting them in slightly different ways and creating those as destinations. Mm-hmm. How far has that work developed, and how is that reflected in what's happened recently? Because we've certainly talked about that in terms of this comment. Clearly your thought frame was on.
Sort of tied together in a way, aren't there, these questions? So we as I was explaining about the destination management partnership, that work to develop a destination plan has been started. What we have got at the moment is, I think it's about 70 pages of initial data about what's going on, which there's a workshop tomorrow with the destination partners to look at some of that, and that includes the businesses themselves. I think the businesses have been really supportive about the idea of having a destination plan in order to be able to work out with a bit more kind of scientific rigour what might actually lead us to increase our business. So there's a lot of talk and anecdote about what we think about visitors and who might be coming and what they might actually want to do. But hopefully this will give us all the kind of a compendium, because obviously hotels have one set of data, hospitality venues and entertainment venues and theatres have different data. So this will bring everything together. Everyone can see what does the data tell us. We can also have the discussion about how do we position the different parts of the borough, and do we identify them differently for the different features that they have or the different roles that they play. And also to Councillor Lang's earlier point about the campus, how are we defining the campus as part of that destination offer? So I guess what I'm saying to you is we're on the way, but we'll probably need to come back when we've done the next stage of work to explain what the outcome of that is and what the trajectory of the destination plan is proposed to be. And the idea of that is that by creating a shared plan, those businesses will also see, actually, if we invested a bit here, so for example, with the campaign, if we all put a little bit of money in to do something, and it's the right thing, it will benefit everybody. So that's where we are with the destination work.
And just one thing to add to that, which is to create a destination, a real destination, you don't do that over 1 or 2 years. It takes time. Whatever famous destination event you might think of, whether it's the Edinburgh Festival, whatever, it didn't happen in 1 or 2 years. It takes time and building up. So this is our second year. I think what's encouraging is that the businesses are continuing to support that initiative and they want to continue to do that. So each year we'll learn a little bit more and hopefully we can understand how to improve the target audience and the marketing and the social media and the messaging and the type of product and the program we're delivering in order to build it up. What's encouraging is that there's an upward trend at the moment of visitors coming in, and we'll be looking to try and maintain that, and that's what our partners are going to be keen on as well. So we can only do this with our partners. It's all supported by the partners, essentially, and so we're working with them very closely, as Val said, to analyse the data, to help them to work out what we can do to support them and to continue to drive this forward. And hopefully we'll continue to build on that over the coming years. So in 3-5 years' time, you know, West is Best becomes quite a thing, which will be nice.
I know, agree, clearly this is a sort of long-term ambition. Clearly didn't want to forget that we have been talking about this and that we were keen to understand that. So, no, absolutely. I mean, there are, could probably spend all night doing this, but I want to keep you here for that. I mean, one of the things that I was interested in, I think we've obviously touched on it already, is the sort of summer sport idea. It sounds great that we've got some themes that are coming through, and I think are going with the grain of what we've got, and we've already got boat race here, so why not take that forward? I mean, interested in just if you've got any further comments about how that will develop. I mean, certainly rowing is a big thing. There are other events. There's the Heavy River Race, I guess, a couple of weeks before the boat race. Yeah. There is the Great River Race or something that comes a bit later in the year. It doesn't really get as much. It's quite an interesting event. I mean, also on the boat race, clearly Fulham Gardens is a key area for that, because from the time I've been down to the boat race, that's absolutely rammed on boat race day, which was true of Bishop's Park as well. But interested in further reflections on how this sort of summer sport might pan out. Clearly, you've got the ability to bring people here into, you know, have some great entertainment and one thing and another, but how that might benefit people in terms of and others in terms of getting them involved in sports. Whether there's an element of our active well-being strategy that can be sort of activated as part of that as well.
It definitely is. And so as we've all referred to, there's a lot of sporting partners. So, you know, the boat races, there's Queens, there's the football clubs and all the things that go on all year round, the cricket club and so on. So I think at the moment those partners are working together. So that they're all coming together for the sort of pretty much the first time to think about what might a sport-related marketing campaign look like. So I can't give you the detail of it, but on the point about the active wellbeing strategy, I think that is something where we are looking, for example, at whether we can work with the boat race to even put indoor rowing stuff on at the leisure centres or competitions. It's not quite the same as getting out on the water, but it's a kind of a theme to engage people. We've got a live round for King's Coronation Youth Fund for sports activities at the moment. We awarded some earlier on in the year and put them in because obviously they're sport rather than culture, but we've got another round at the moment, and certainly those things will be happening between now and December. A lot of them will happen over the summer with summer sports. So hopefully we can exactly do as you suggest, and you know have the squares populated with tester activity and taster sessions for people and so on. That's part of it.
No, I mean I know certainly from some of the schools obviously are involved in getting kids onto the river as well. So,
yeah.
As well. Councillor Chabot, I don't know who wants to come into.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. Well, I think great discussions. You know, I would say that it's been a great presentation, great work happening in that department and about team. Thank you very much for your comments. I guess there's a few points that I want to drive home, which were, well, first of all, you can see progress against our overall Where Culture Connects strategy. You can see that that's being delivered through the Cultural Compact, which in itself is a state-of-the-art kind of governance structure we've implemented in this borough that I know that DCMS and other central government bodies have kind of come to look at as an example of where the council doesn't have a top-down approach of, well, we think this should happen, but we talk to all the control partners in the borough and come with joint initiatives. So that's a very thin balance of not being the main driver to be seen to be imposing objectives and things that we think the cultural community now HF wants, working with them to understand what they are and how to support them. So you've heard also the Destination Management Partnership, which means tomorrow is another structure that we've implemented, which is how do we work with the cultural sector and the tourism sector in this instance. KCYF, thank you for mentioning this, that's really exciting stuff. The King's Coronation Youth Funds, I should have said. Great things that the focus, really good focus of targeting young people, focusing on inclusion, on access, and on participation, particularly for those who might miss out. It's a really important thing. Culture embedded in public realm as well. Not culture just to have culture, but culture to create places that people go to, town centres that are strong, neighbourhoods that are proud. For the record, I would have Christmas trees and Mariah Carey playing everywhere in the borough. Equally a Christmas enthusiast, some people call her a freak. And the other for Shepherd's Bush will be looking to create a business improvement district, another work stream in culture, because traders and local businesses are the ones to Christmas decorations. So I'm really excited about that, working with them, etc. Also, culture connected to well-being, not just an event. It's not just going to somewhere to have something. It's also contributing to your physical well-being, to your mental well-being, to making sure that people have places that they can connect, meet the community, build that fabric that keeps people together. And finally, always good governance and accountability. You have transparent reports, you have transparent ways of working with budgets, a direct ratio to investment benefits for the local community and our local business sector. So thank you very much for questions.
Thank you very much. I'll just sum up, but thank you very much for the report and the discussion this evening. I think the overriding thing is, well, I think we're very impressed by the work that's taken place, and it has really driven forward the strategy and the compact that has been agreed, and clearly we have seen updates of that over several years now, but certainly in the last couple of years. As I say, I think it's clear that the hubs and the work streams are sort of set, take on board the point that clearly this is a longer term plan, so that if we have destination and modular building, it is going to be a period of years, but it sounds like we made an excellent start, and that the number and diversity of events and organisations that are being engaged is impressive, and clearly something we want to try and continue. I think we acknowledge from what you said that there are, some of that does come with funding and other pressures, and I think we'll continue to encourage you, which you're clearly doing, to try and get that funding to continue with arts and other events, and so hopefully the Arts Council will come forward with some of that money. Just to mention some of the specific points, clearly very keen on the exactly how well the VE Day went. Obviously adding Big J Day back into that, so that's reflected. Point also made about the positive impact of Black History Month and the Eaton family. I think obviously we're also keen to see more Christmas tree lighting, but clearly noticed and particularly for the cultural, but also the business and business economy aspects of that, but note the aspects of the funding that needs to go with that. I think we're enthusiastic about the summer of sport, and obviously made some points about the boat race and how to work with that. Also keen to see the borough promoted through film location, and I guess that also, as you say, has some benefits in terms of funding for other events, but also just gets the borough recognised more widely. And clearly, in terms of the examples, if we can extend those into other diverse groups, as Councillor Patel was mentioning, that just round off what is a very impressive report and something, we thank you all for the work that's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll, on that positive note, let's conclude that item and we move on to, thank you for attending on tonight, and move on to item number, so we've noted community reports. And so now we move on to the local plan updates. So, no, the report is the local plan updates. So thank you very much, Mr. Provides an update on progress of the local plan review. The first draft of the local plan went out for public consultation from the 29th of October last year until the 10th of December. This version of the local plan is known as the Regulation 18, which I think Matt Patterson, who's the head of social planning, we've got with us, will probably tell us a bit more about as well. So, Mr. Patterson, thank you very much for coming on tonight and look forward to hearing what you're saying.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Matthew Patterson. I'm from the spatial planning team, council. Yeah, so just a brief update on our progress on developing the new local plan for Hammersmith and Fulham. Just a reminder that the local plan is a statutory document that all local authorities must have in place and keep up to date at all times as well. The importance of the local plan is that it sets out how we will, as an authority, manage development and growth in the borough over the next 15 years. And we use that as the basis for determining new planning applications when they come into us and determining whether those meet our requirements as an authority. So just by way, we obviously have our current adopted local plan, which we brought into effect in 2018. So it's 8 years out of date. It's still very good, but it is time for it to be reviewed and updated. And so as part of that review and process, is the first stage is to go out to consultation on what's called a Regulation 18. The purpose of publishing it at this stage is to invite everyone in the community to have their say on how we might shape the future of the borough together. It is a plan, it's the council's plan, but it's one that we should share with our residents and with our business communities and others in the borough. We all have a role to play in shaping that future for us. So yeah, the first draft, we put it out for consultation. It went out from 29th of October till the 10th of December. We undertook a number and range of events to advertise that. We did online webinars and we went and stood in libraries and on street corners and trying to engender some engagement with everyone around the local plan. At the high level, the vision and objectives are all set out there. It is about how we will promote the regeneration of certain parts of the borough, while at the same time protecting and enhancing other elements of the borough that play a key feature in its amenity. Things like our local parks that we all love and enjoy, but also our rich heritage of places as well, and how we'll protect those and conserve our historic environment. How we'll promote health and well-being through the provision of new local services and facilities where they will need to go to support new development and growth. And also how we'll respond to climate change and how we'll deal with sustainable travel as well. And then likewise how we'll provide the homes and the new jobs that the borough needs to provide. And along the way, what we'll do to enhance other assets and features like the riverfront as we go there. So yeah, the consultation went really well. We received 235 representations, which is pretty good actually. And of those, they made 667 specific comments and views within those as well about how we might alter the documents. They do showcase a broad range of community involvement and engagement in the local plan, which we're pleased on. So it's not specific to one sector. Normally it's the development industry that's more heavily weighted in our consultation responses, but we had significant feedback from local amenity and community groups across the borough as well. We did get quite a bit of feedback from developers who contribute insight into current issues with regard to development viability, feasibility and market conditions. And we had good engagement and feedback as well from all of our statutory consultees, such as Natural England and the Environment Agency and the GLA as well, TFL. The key issues raised through that consultation, certainly the development industry isn't happy that we're sticking with our 50% affordable housing requirement on development. And they're certainly not happy that we will be seeking a 20% funding obligation on schemes below 10%. But this is in the context that we are one of the most unaffordable boroughs in terms of housing need, and that we are desperately in want of further affordable housing to meet that obligation and requirement. And but there are certainly viability challenges to doing that currently in the current market. We've looked at changes to tenure and being specific around our requirements as well about large family housing, which I think the development industry will also find challenging. We are a very compact borough, so to provide significant quantums of family housing is quite difficult. But we still see that as a challenge that the development industry should seek to at least have a go at, really, and because our acute need is really in that family dwelling sizes. But there is fears that we need to take account of in terms of what the impact of those policies, aspirations will be on how development will come forward in the borough and how we can expect to work with our development partners to deliver our aspirations. We did get representations from Historic England in particular about tall buildings in the borough and the impact of tall buildings on our conservation areas in particular, and wanting us to be much more prescriptive as to where those tall buildings would be acceptable and suitable, and the heights of those tall buildings as well, and general design principles for those tall buildings too. We had lots of representations as well around, we currently have in the existing local plan, we require when you come to dispose of an existing office building that you have at least marketed it for a period of 12 months. We had that in there because economic cycles can change quite quickly, and we can have a sudden downturn in the market, which means we've got vacancy. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to react straight away to that and end up losing office development in the borough that is needed in the long term to meet our growth for employment. So we try, and what we're doing through the new local plan is extending that to 24 months. Well, that's what we went out to consultation on. We had quite a bit of pushback to that. And there is, they quoted, we do have a significant surplus of current office provision, particularly within the Hammersmith Central area at the moment, in particular along Hammersmith Road and around the area. Ideally, we'd still like to see that retained in office and employment use, but it's challenging. It's not just challenging for Hammersmith and Fulham. It's an issue facing all of London and the capital. But we are seeing a lot of our market leak into the central London area as they take up surplus stock, and they're getting fairly generous, I would say, leases at the moment on market there. But that's not to say that we don't have a lot to offer. We are still prime location. Once HS2 comes on stream as well, we hope to see a lot more activity in the borough and we will be again one of the more connected boroughs in all of the UK, and with that connectivity comes opportunities for further employment growth. So we don't really want to lose that, but if need be, we will look at alternatives to bringing those floor spaces forward. Other areas, we obviously have still ambitions around the Hammersmith flyover, putting that into a tunnel and removing the gyratory from the around Hammersmith Broadway. Obviously, we've been in engagement for a long time with TfL and with Department of Transport around those proposals. We haven't got that much traction, but it's still an ambition for the town centre, and it is key for the town centre because it does act as a significant severance between the town centre and the river. And we're still seeing that now. And if we can join the two, it will demonstrate how much more prosperous both of those elements could be over time and work in tandem. Reopening Hammersmith Bridge was put forward as a higher priority that the local plan should seek to address. We have, over successive local plans for the last 25 years, sought to promote greater car-free development in the borough, in recognition that we are one of the most dense boroughs in all of the UK, and therefore, if we are to accommodate more growth, that growth can't have an impact on existing parking within residential areas and also on our road network in terms of congestion, because we just don't have capacity to increase that road network. And obviously we're looking to prioritise more accessible, sustainable patterns of travel, in particular active travel. And so the local plan, the new local plan, continues down that route, continues to promote low levels of parking on sites, to no parking other than for blue badge and for servicing requirements. Calls for expanded EV charging, which is, well, I think we've got a very, very good track record of our EV provision, in particular, certainly our highways teams and climate change teams have been working to nearly have every lamppost have an EV charging. So we're one of the few boroughs that has a significant number, but I think there is further we can do. I'm not too sure about the financial support for the transition to electric vehicles. I don't know it's quite the role and function of the local plan, however. From the Environment Agency, it's fairly consistent messaging from them. Unfortunately, the entire borough is at strategic flood risk zone, just because we are on the Thames. And if the Thames barrier doesn't do what it's meant to do, we could see flooding in the area. So they are concerned that we should make stronger recommendations regarding such matters as how we deal with greenfield runoff rates on new developments, and how we deal with a greater water efficiency as well in schemes coming forward. I must say, on the vast majority of new developments that we deal with, our drainage colleagues are very good, and we do get to exceptional standards of flood mitigation measures on schemes, and we get greenfield runoff rates are very low for the borough as a whole. Just finally, we did get a significant number of representations that were all very similar in nature or identical in nature. 178 comments highlighting community concern primarily around Uxbridge Road. This is to do with the campaign that's being undertaken on Uxbridge Road about the social and economic challenges needing urgent attention there. There's a lot that was in those representations that are probably beyond the local plan to address. They deal with matters of street cleanliness and the like. But where the local plan does have a role to play is in how we across the borough, how we manage and maintain our town centres and our high streets. And in particular, we are mindful of the uses that go into some of these town centres as well, and the clustering of certain uses such as gambling establishments and fast food takeaways. And so the current local planning policy looks at how we can further reduce instances of those clustering of a lot of those uses that undermine the vitality of the town centres and our high streets. And we're also looking at what further designation we could use for this area as well to highlight the intentions of the council to help with regeneration of the area. So just finally, in terms of next steps, as you can see, we're through the Regulation 18, we're reviewing, and we will respond to the comments received and take those through to Cabinet to get approval to go out to what's called Regulation 19, which is a more formal consultation stage on the local plan, where we don't really invite comment and representations. You invite reasons why the plan is not sound or fit for purpose at that point in time. And then we essentially take all of those comments that we receive, and they go off to an independent planning inspector who will undertake what's called an examination in public of our local plan. And they will scrutinise it and invite representations around a table to come and talk about what they think are the areas of the plan's weaknesses that make it unsound and unfit. And we'll have to defend it at that stage. However, in the meantime, we will be engaging further on Uxbridge Road, and we've got a meeting set up with local residents in the area to address their representations. We are doing further work on our evidence base as well. We will be strengthening the evidence base around specifically flood risk in tall buildings, and we will see how we can ensure that we can give greater clarity in the next iteration of the plan on these matters. And then we will be looking, as we say, to go out later in this year. And the reason we're on a quite tight time frame is that there is a new national planning policy framework currently up for consultation. It has, the government allows us at this point in time to be examined under the old time planning policy framework as long as we submit our plans by the end of this year. So that's what we're aiming to do. There's never a good time to undertake a local plan review, I must say. We've obviously got reforms at national level. There are issues fundamentally across the UK with house building at this point in time, with pressures on that and high inflation. And obviously it'd be nice if we could follow the London plan in terms of its process through to publication, but it's been delayed and we don't want to hold on any longer. We want to get a new local plan up to date, so we will continue to advance this. So yeah, happy to take any
Sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, Chair, the consultation process took place from the 29th of October to the 10th of December. Yes. Period of 6 weeks.
Yeah.
During that period, you received 235 submissions. That equates to about 40 a week.
Yeah.
I mean, that's encouraging. I think effort should be made to actually enhance that if possible. I'm not sure what efforts have been made to actually get a better response.
Yeah.
40 a week doesn't sound all that great.
No. Yeah. The local plan, unfortunately, it's not the most riveting thing for people to get their teeth into, unfortunately. What we tried to do is work with our comms team to essentially take a 300-page document and turn it into, we had a top 10 sort of issues for engagement, so that we could use social media more to prompt people to hopefully find a topic of interest for them to then engage in the consultation on the local plan. But it is a planning in general is one of these areas where it's unfortunately it's very dry, I think, and people kind of don't appreciate probably the role and function of the local plan in terms of how to shape their future in the borough. I think they see it more as just something that the council produces, but they're probably unclear. And we did a lot of work with our amenity societies early in the process before we launched the local plan on its role and function to sort of try and get a wider appreciation of it. Yeah, there are challenges in terms of getting people to engage.
Just a couple of points. Firstly, has the consultation taken place online?
Yes, it takes place. We have webinars and we do in person as well, and the consultation's live. And you can, we have it set up so that you can type your comments in as you read it, so you can respond to the specific sections that you're interested in, and you can tab different things. So we try to make it as interactive and easy as possible to submit representation on the plan or to make comments.
And the final question is about the employment demand in the economy.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn that there's apparently more supply of office space in Hammersmith.
Yeah.
Because you may know that this is one of the cornerstone of upstream, the upstream documentation, where they're actually encouraging more office space to be created.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs to start business.
Yeah, yeah. So we are working with economic development colleagues on looking at proposals. Obviously, we want to retain it. It's just currently we do have a significant surplus of office space. Like I said, that you would be aware of places like the Virgin Media have obviously left theirs. Halpros have moved out from across the road on their side of things as well. And we have issues with some people getting full occupation, put it that way. They've got some occupants, but they're unable to lease the whole floor space. So the industry is struggling a little bit at this point in time. And it's just I think, like I said, it's not specific to us. It's across the UK and particularly in London. And I think it's a reflection both of everyone still coming to terms with post-COVID working arrangements, lots more working from home. A lot of companies have adopted different practices, which means they don't require as much floor space as they used to have and are much more flexible in how they use floor space as well. And just competition as well between office providers in the marketplace. And I don't think it's helped either by recent government proposals around energy performance ratings for new builds for letting. So a lot of our office stock is of an age now and requires quite substantial investment to upgrade it to meet the new sort of EPC ratings coming out. So that's one of the issues of struggle. So that's where certainly our climate change team and also our economic development team, who are roles playing, looking at what we can do to help these people, the operators of our office space to get those in, how we market the borough better as well.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Thank you. Thank you for your report. Just a couple of questions and observations. When you talk about the housing development, you've got saying there's a proposed 50% affordable housing, and clearly developers aren't very happy with that.
Yeah.
Now, one could sort of understand that because, as you said yourself, we're not a particularly affordable borough. And obviously, if you want them to provide developments that are fit for purpose, that actually are good quality, as against some of the developments that have been on the market, which are shabby at best, which people don't deserve. So they've got to make a profit somewhere. So somehow we have to be a little bit more realistic about the expectations And if we've got that amount of affordable housing, then we need to look then at transport. Transport in this borough is lacking. Now, whilst it's all very well to say we don't want developments, we want developments where they're basically car free, that's fine. But when you get to social housing, you have a lot of residents that actually have jobs that are started unsociable hours. So you're precluding them or even excluding them from those developments because about how do they get to those jobs? Some will have cars. So we had that fight back in 2000 with the Imperial War. That's very same question. Affordable housing, how do people get to their jobs if public transport doesn't run? So I think we need to be slightly more realistic about what are the expectations of who we are hoping will be in these developments and how are they going to get their day-to-day work. My other comment on high rise is that we have few places where they actually fit in. There seems to be quite a lot in the south, now it's going up potentially in the south of the ward, the borough, which is obviously Hammersmith. What I don't see is any sort of notification about the impact living in tower blocks has on families, on their mental health. There's a reason why a number of countries have stopped producing high-rise developments because of people's mental health and the impact it is having, where the suicide rates increase. We've already got one of the highest suicide rates in London. So if we need to be taking into account the impact these developments could have, and also what facilities are we putting in place for these people to use. So it's what those things are taken into account, and just some reassurance that they are being considered, that would be really helpful.
Yep. Yeah, and certainly, you know, it is a balancing act when it comes to issues like car parking as well. And we understand and appreciate that there will be instances and potentially where people will need access to a vehicle to access employment opportunities and jobs. And we are certainly, as an authority, I think we certainly are one that's promoting an evening economy in the borough and ensuring that we hope that we have the support of TfL and the bus networks to get people around some places, but there are more things we could do. And yeah, there will be instances where people will need access to a vehicle. So it is a balancing act between ensuring that we can accommodate growth and ensuring that that doesn't result in full-on congestion on our road network and parking constraint as well.
But we don't want to constrain people, given that these are the people we are hoping to help provide accommodation and employment.
Yeah.
So you have to be mindful of what is possible.
Yeah. And then yes, on tall buildings, I think there's been a number of studies done on the impact of tall buildings in particular on people's health and well-being and mental health in particular. And we will have reflection on those in terms of how we take forward the policy. I think you'll find that we are across London obviously proposing to densify to meet housing demand and need across the capital as a whole, and we need to consider as an authority what is appropriate in terms of what tall building means in a local context and where that should go, and the amenities there to support those tall buildings and ensure that they are fit for purpose in terms of we want all of our residents to have access to highly sustainable and fit for purpose housing. Yeah.
That's fine. Just a couple of points. Thank you very much for that. It's very interesting reading with advance. You mentioned about the growing population.
Yeah.
I think our population is also aging.
It is.
Right.
Yeah, the demographics has changed.
I think it's more significant, that's not really other joint boroughs. But is the plan taking that into account? Do you think significantly, appropriately, given the demographics of housing people?
Yeah, it's changing in different ways than you'd normally expect in terms of the plan. In the past, we would have looked at what housing needs an ageing population might require, and looking at, in particular, retirement type dwellings and the like, and extra care facilities. But as an authority, obviously, we're keen to support people stay in their properties as long as possible through preventative care and the like. So I think more the plan is what social and physical infrastructure we need to support an ageing population. And in particular, we've been working with we have an accessibility panel forum in the borough, and they've scrutinised our policies to ensure that we take account of, as people age and they might not be as mobile as they used to be, ensuring how you access services. We ensure that the policies of the plan are up to date in terms of ensuring that most people will have good access and can access new facilities and services that we provide as part of the local plan. And I think that's probably more where the focus is going. And that's generally on improving health and wellbeing and getting around the borough more accessible.
And just a couple of other quick observations about flood risk.
Yeah.
That is a key part of the plan, because obviously we had issues with that a few years ago. But
yes.
I mean, we were very lucky the other week when that made by us. I know it's slightly different way that the camera of the road just to get all that water into an adjoining authority rather than into us. So and that has caused. So I'm pleased about that, but also I just want to mention that you mentioned in there about the greening projects. I just like to encourage that, because I think that there are, through the Green Investment Fund, I think there are a number of small but significant projects beginning to take shape across Hammersmith and Fulham. And I think we ought to be encouraging that more, because I think that is a big concern of residents actually in certain areas. About flooding, and we ought to be concerned about that.
And certainly those initiatives are key. The more we can do as an local authority to deal with surface water runoff, the better, because below the surface is obviously Thames water, and you're talking about quite a archaic drainage system in terms of, and we've seen over this winter many burst pipes across the borough. Obviously a major one up and
last point, Chair, I'm just pleased to see that the Uxbridge Road is there. Regeneration. I actually live off the Uxbridge Road. Although I have to say that I think that the model that we can come from that and develop that, we ought to be thinking about applying that to other parts of the borough as well. It's not just the Uxbridge Road. In fact, I went to a pub that's just really fantastic reviews in the Times and others, saying what a great road it was to walk down the Uxbridge Road. Right? Absolutely fantastic road. With all the different restaurants, and there's a new fishmongers over there and things like that. So I think it's good that we're doing that. I think it's very good. I think it's exciting actually. But I think we can learn from that to apply that in other parts of the borough as well.
Yes, and I think there are parts of the borough. It's one of these things where our town centres are going through a period of significant change. You know, we never thought that the online retail would be as big as it ever was. I remember 10 years ago having, we had Nathaniel Litchfield and Partners were our consultants on retail at the point, saying, oh, don't worry, online retail will only take about 5% of the trade. And you have to think about what it is these days. So our town centres are in a period of transition, really. And we need to do whatever we can to support that transition, ensuring that we don't get significant numbers of vacancy in those town centres. And we are. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone has a real handle on what is a future high street at this point in time. Is it, I think our ideal is it's a place for the community to come together to still have essential services and that the community needs, but more places to meet rather than to buy goods and be a retail centre as they used to be, a traditional retail centre. I think that's long gone. So we need to work with the industry because it's market forces and market processes that drive these things, and we need to be reactive and responsive to that. But we need to work through what that transition is. And yes, it's not just Uxbridge, it's Sydney, Goldhawk, it's parts of North End Road, Munster. Part of that's just monitoring as well.
Thank you very much. Sorry, just got a couple of points. Sorry, first of all, on transport, so you take the point that was made about that, but I'm not sure I entirely agree in the sense that we do have a fairly extensive, TfL provides a very extensive night bus service across the borough, which I know from my own experience because one has my house or evening, which is fine. But so there's clearly that, and of course there has been the advent of the night tube, albeit that doesn't really run all the time. And I guess some of those do run in Hammersmith and Fulham. But interested, if there are any reflections now as to, in terms of trying to get our residents and our future residents to work, how much that would need to, the sort of developments that would be needed there, presumably with boroughs across London developing local plans over the course of time. TfL will always get representations from ourselves and other boroughs to how transport has to be delivered, and particularly in those sort of smaller hours of the night if people need to get to work on those. That clearly there's the night bus service and some of the night tubes in some cases might help. So that's point number one. The second point I think was around about Uxbridge Road. I wonder if you could just comment briefly about the clustering issue.
Yeah.
There's clearly the point has been made about clustering gambling and fast food outlets. How does that work over the course of time in terms of presumably people have got the relevant licences to carry on gambling and fast food restaurants, but how would the plan sort of seek to reduce that clustering over time, given the fact that presumably those once given those so those licences are there unless sort of rescinded or whatever.
Yeah, so dealing with that first, I mean, we can't apply policy retrospectively. So if something's lawfully established, we can't make it unlawful, if you like. But we realise that there is still turnover along high streets, and it's at that point where they come in for an alternative use that we can apply the new policy. And we're working in tandem. You've got planning policy, but then you also have licensing, and the licensing guys are working hard around the new gambling policies for licensing as well, and the two are to work in tandem in terms of ensuring that where we already have significant numbers of these establishments, that when someone comes in, even if it was a gaming establishment, if they then need to change to a different one, we can use both planning powers and the licensing to prevent it, because there's already an oversupply in those that are harmful to the vitality of the town centre. And that's the case we can try and make to refuse those applications moving forward. So it's again, as I say, our high streets are transitioning. Part of that is hopefully moving away from some of these less desirable uses to better uses within our town centres, and where we can, we'll support that, and we will try as hard as we can through the new stronger policies to refuse those applications. People still have the right of an appeal, and obviously in some circumstances a planning inspector will find it acceptable when we certainly don't. So yeah.
And did you have any reflection on the transport?
Yeah, on the transport, I mean, I still think we are the envy of most boroughs across London in terms of our transport network. Certainly in West London alone, we have one of the best transport networks around. But working with TfL, yes, they are very much stretched in terms of what they're seeking to do right across the capital in terms of improving transport connectivity. But we're still working with our West London partners. Obviously, there's the West London Orbital proposal that we're very much supportive of, that looks at ensuring where we can make those connections to those new stations that then ensure people have better access to employment opportunities in and around West London. And obviously the GLA are working hard on a orbital bus network as well, rapid bus networks. And it's the role of, I think, us and the authority to ensure that we improve our connections internally, make those sustainable as possible to access new tube and rail facilities where they come on board.
I think that's
Speaking, sure, thank you, Chair. Speaking is kind of not overseeing planning, but heavily involved in the transport policy. And also our efforts to densify our network of e-bays, cycle storage, so that's transport solutions that are available independently of infrastructure. It's ensuring that communities that are far away from stations, where there is that service that you mentioned, can get those independently and at any given time. So not monopolise the discussion, but we've also been hard at work in this borough to ensure that decarbonised transportation choices are available to all residents, particularly to communities away from town centres. They can do that last mile or sometimes couple of miles into a transport hub to then take them to, I think it's rightly been said, the jobs, but also the people and the activities that people can take.
Thank you very much. So we'll have to move on there, but thank you very much for the presentation. I think it's given us all food for thought, and it's good to see that there have been a good number of consultation responses that has covered the sort of the waterfront of the various issues that you're seeking in the local plan, realising that it's potentially to some relatively dry, but I think obviously there's been a lot of interest in it here tonight. So great to hear that there have been some good engagement in it. Interested in the commentary and the discussion about seeing in some areas of the borough some slight oversupply of office space, but interested in the fact that we want to keep that, particularly given some of the links with upstream. We had some discussion about the affordable housing and also of course the sort of transport that's available. I think I've had some interesting discussion on that, and certainly I think we'd all be interested in the data as to how that works as part of moving forward to the Regulation 19 process. So some discussion about tall buildings, but certainly note the fact that there's a lot of the balancing acts that you mentioned there. Lots about the flood risk as well. Good to see that's a part, and obviously, of course, there have been actions in that area, particularly a number of the, I guess they're still called sustainable urban drainage systems. Yeah, we've got, and I'm certainly very familiar with the one that's going in on Westfield Road at the moment. So lots to cover. Thank you very much for covering it for us. We look forward, I think, to a further update in due course once it's been developed further.
Well, thank you all for your comments as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, with thanks to Mr. Patterson for that, we will, I think we've noted the progress on the local plan and try to understand the next steps to be taken as part of the review process. So, we come to another big item, so thank you, thanks for your time. So we've got the 20, and obviously colleagues, 2026-27 revenue budget and medium-term financial strategy. And we're first of all going to hand over to Councillor Rowan Reid to give an overview of the budget and the medium-term financial strategy. So thanks very much, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Rowan Reid, I'm a member for Finance and Form. Thank you very much to the committee for allowing me to come here and talk through the budget for the coming year. So I'm going to start off just by talking through the strategic context of where we are in terms of putting the budget together. I'll then go into the details of the changes that we are making as part of this year's budget, and then we'll just finish off with the timelines, the next steps for passing this budget. So starting off with the strategic context, obviously we've been working on the budget since before February last year. But when it comes to the hard numbers, we start getting these really in November at the time of the Chancellors. budget. That gives us the overall size of the local government funding cake. So it also gives us lots of the figures that we use to plug into our budget to assess our assumptions. So things like the 1.5% economic growth that we're getting, or we're expecting in the coming year. Obviously, the level of economic growth will affect the amount of support we have to provide as a council. When the economy is doing very well, fewer people come to the council looking for financial help. When it's not doing so well, as has been the case for some time now, that we anticipate more demand. Obviously, 1.5% is better than nothing, but not a great deal better than nothing. So we've had to feed that into our assumptions. One of the other things that we look at is inflation, and we've got an estimated rate of 2.5% for the year, so coming back down towards the 2% target, although not quite there yet. Obviously, inflation will have an impact on how much money we have to put aside for things like paying price increases. Lots of our contracts are based on inflation figures. So this really, again, helps us to build the budget. The third figure I think that's really important when it comes to setting our assumptions is around interest rates. So interest rates have come down quite considerably over the last couple of years, from a peak of above 5%. So we've had a number of reductions, expecting further reductions this year, and that has an impact on both the interest that we receive from our cash balances, but also the cost of borrowing as well. So again, this is something that we have to factor in. Other things that we consider when we're planning the budget are demographic factors. Obviously, the demand for certain services will go up or down based on the number of people we expect will be using them. So demographic factors are one of the key issues that we consider when it comes to planning the budget. Also, any additional legislative burdens placed on local authorities. So governments, both persuasions for a long time have put more and more responsibility on local councils for providing certain services, sometimes not necessarily with the requisite funding in order to do that. So we've got to be aware of all of these new responsibilities and make sure that these are all factored in when it comes to budget setting. Final thing I just mentioned on the slide is some of the longer term regeneration schemes. You just heard about the local plan, and so factoring in regeneration schemes and larger capital projects is something we have to do when we're looking at the medium term financial plan. Because obviously this goes over a number of years, whereas the budget itself is just for 1 year. So if we move on to the next slide, the fair funding review. So if the budget sets the overall size of the local government funding cake, the fair funding review decides how big a slice each council gets. So fair funding is something that we've been anticipating now for some time. The review's been kicking around for a decade or so, and we've been anticipating not getting a particularly favourable settlement as a result of this. Unfortunately, that's been the case. We're not particularly happy with the settlements that got as a result. One of the small mercies in it is that we have a 3-year settlement rather than the previous 1-year settlement that we used to get. So this does help us to an extent, and that we can start planning for the future with a bit more certainty in terms of figures. But we would have preferred a more favourable settlement in order to do that. So just as a little bit of background for fair funding, the fair funding review, this is essentially a large formula that various demographic and other factors from all councils get plugged into, and then final figure is spat out at the other end, and that's how much money each council is entitled to under the new scheme. There clearly seems to be some problem with it, because there are 5 councils who've done particularly badly, most of which are central London councils. So clearly something isn't being taken into account as it should be. In Hammersmith and Fulham, according to the Department for the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, according to their own figures, of the 296 local authority areas, Hammersmith and Fulham is 120th most deprived. So although you might read about the streets being paved with gold from some other parts of the country, we think that they they deserve more money. 60% of local authority areas are in a better position than we are. So it seems to us that the result of this change is that we should have such a negative impact in terms of our settlement. So then moving on to the budget itself and the decisions that we are taking. This is a budget that safeguards the financial resilience of the council and protects some of the key services that residents have come to rely on and some of the unique services that people enjoy here in Hammersmith and Fulham. So there is no new growth spending in this budget, but we are providing some additional funding to meet some of the extra demands that we spoke about anticipating earlier. Now, going into an election, I'd love to be able to put together a all singing, all dancing, flashy budget, funding all sorts of new services, cutting taxes, but it just wouldn't be prudent at this juncture to do that. This is a budget that provides funding for these key services that people use, people rely on, and protects them for the years to come. So if you move on to the next slide, which provides some details of what's actually changing in this budget. So a few of the things to note here, you'll see there inflation accounted for in terms of pay and prices. We've got £3 million for some essential pressures, things that we've identified that aren't funded in previous year's budget, which we are going to need to find additional resources for. But the biggest figure by far on that page is the nearly £18 million of efficiency savings that we're making within the year. So if we move on to the next slide, this provides some of the essential pressures. These are the things, £3 million that we need to meet because these are new costs that we're incurring. We'll see their increase in costs of concessionary fares that local authorities are required to provide. You'll see there an extra £200,000 for our council tax support scheme, something I'm very pleased that we've been able to maintain and indeed expand over the previous years, and some additional resources that help us collect more council tax. So although it's down there as a cost, overall, because it brings in far more revenue, this is a cost that's worth paying. But by far and away, the biggest figure on this page is the change in interest receivable from our cash balances. I mentioned earlier about interest rates coming down. One of the impacts on that is that in previous years we put some of the interest that we received from our balances into the general fund budget. With rates coming down, the interest gets less, and so we have to take account of this in the budget. Although this is listed here, it might appear like it's a negative thing that we've got £2.4 million less to put back in. You should remember as well that the reduced interest rates also affect the cost of borrowing. So actually, overall, we're in a better position because of this change in rates. So this 2.4 million is a small price to pay for the benefits that we get elsewhere in the budget as a result. And then finally, on to the savings proposal. So this is the detail of the £18 million of savings. What I should say here is that these are all efficiency savings rather than reductions in services. So a key theme, I think, of this is where we're able to identify problems earlier on. We can solve those problems when they're simpler and cheaper, rather than allowing problems to develop and become more complicated and costing the council more money eventually to untangle. So a good example of that is the homeless reduction strategy. So there's been a real concerted effort to tackle the most egregious, most expensive, most complex cases of homelessness, and that's resulted, as you can see here, in a large efficiency saving. In terms of the adult social care transformation, by providing direct payments in more cases to people, they're able to come up with solutions that are better tailored to their own circumstances, but also actually that save the council money because you're not using the same, not using a sledgehammer to crack a nut in some cases where we don't necessarily need to use a more expensive service that we may have done in the past. A couple of other things to point out here, the funding of the local support payments. So it was very welcome news that the government has decided to continue the household support fund, something that the previous government had said was going to be abolished. So this is money that really goes towards helping those on the lowest incomes. Previously the local support payment was something that was it was administered by RBKC, and as well intentioned as it was a very poorly administered fund. For every £3 it gave out, it cost £1 to administer. We don't think that's a good use of taxpayers' money, so we've taken it back in house, and it's being funded from this new HFS money, HSF money. There's also £500,000 new legislation means that we can claim back credit card transaction fees. It's a no-brainer for £500,000, so that's an efficiency that we're taking. And then finally, I think something that's worth mentioning, something we spoke about last Wednesday at full council in terms of the increases in our council tax collection rates. So this is something that's been brought about partly from investments in the revenue and benefits service. So we're using tools like new technology, better use of data, to properly identify where council tax is owed, but also with the ethical debt collection policy, we're better able to help people who would otherwise be unable to pay, to get them back into a position where they are able to pay and are able to carry on paying in the future through measures like identifying benefits they may be entitled to, through helping them sort out their finances, or perhaps in some cases providing payment plans so that they're able to pay the full amount over a longer period. And that's had a real meaningful impact on how much we raise, and that's been very helpful in terms of meeting the budget requirements. So that's it. That's how we got to a balanced budget. The final slide is just on next steps. So we're taking the revenue budget to all of the policy accountability committees. This, I'm pleased to say, please I can finish it on my favourite of all the PACs. This is the last one. We're going to the policy oversight board tomorrow. So Councillor Vaughan, you get the joy of hearing all of this all over again. And then on Monday it will come to cabinet. And then at the end of the month, on the 25th, we'll have a chance to talk about it all over again and vote on it at full council. So I'm going to hand over now to Kelly, who's going to talk about the more interesting bits of the budget that actually affect are of relevance to this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I'll just bring up my presentation. So good evening everyone, I'm Kate Gooch, I'm Head of Finance for the Police Department. So I'll just give you a little bit more detail about the budget as it relates specifically to services within this PAC. So this budget is about investing in a wide range of universal services that exist in the Police Department. So in this budget we're investing more than £30 million in keeping the borough clean. So with that investment, we undertake around 10 million waste and recycling collections every year from 81,000 homes. And we also sweep around 30,000 kilometres of streets. We're also investing to minimise waste and increase recycling. We've got our weekly food waste collections, we've got wheel bin collections for properties that have got sufficient space. And we're investing in modernising services and tackling the climate emergency. You'll be aware we've got new electric vehicles for waste and street cleansing services. This budget also invests around £3 million in maintaining our green spaces. We've got 53 excellent parks open spaces in the borough, so that's over 213 hectares of green space, which is around 300 football pitches in equivalent terms. We've got around 25,000 trees. This investment has earned us 25 prestigious Green Flag Awards. A year ago we had 21, so we've gained 4 more in the last year, which is with good reviews. And we've got an approved capital investment programme that will see £8.3 million invested to upgrade 95 spaces over a 3-year period. This budget also invests in keeping the borough healthy. We've got 4 leisure centres and 1 swimming pool. They're contracted out, delivered by a third party, and their annual income to the council, so no cost to the taxpayer. We actually earn income from our leisure facilities. And on top of that, we've invested over £1 million in modernising facilities at the Christie Outdoor Sports Centre, and that we've done in partnership with World's Charitable Trust. We're also investing in keeping our roads and pavements in good order and clear of obstacles and ice. So we have over 220 kilometres of roads, 440 kilometres of pavements that we're maintaining every year. We inspect around 17,000 street works, so keeping our highways free from obstacles, allow people to move freely around the borough. And we're investing to tackle the climate and ecological emergency. We've got the highest concentration of electric vehicle charge points in the UK per head, and we referred to that earlier in Matthew's presentation. And we've got our innovative H&F green investment, looking to raise £5 million to invest in active travel measures, improving urban green spaces, and helping to roll out sustainable drainage systems, which we've also spoken about earlier this evening. And we continue to work with developers to encourage low carbon development. We heard a bit earlier about how we're investing in our ambitious cultural strategy, and that includes £1 million being invested in the King's Coronation Youth Fund, so supporting more than 40 local organisations with arts, culture, sports, and youth opportunities. And we invest about £3 million a year in our library services. We've got 5 libraries in the borough. They attract over 900,000 visits every year. And we're investing in the council's pioneering industrial strategy, so upstream London. We referred to this earlier as well, making the borough a global hub of innovation and growth. And since 2017, that's helped to attract £6 billion of investment and 17,000 new jobs into the borough. The H&F resource for upstream London is all provided at no cost to the council. It's all fully funded through external income. And lastly, we're investing in high quality, popular adult learning skills courses. We consistently meet our learner targets in this area, which means we attract the maximum grant funding from the GLA, and therefore that service is provided at no cost to the council. Just on this slide, it's a summary of the budget for the services within this PAC. So this shows the revenue budget only, so the sort of day-to-day budget. We spend about £76 million in total on these areas. We recover about £35 million of income, so our net investment was around £41 million. So the key changes in the budget for next year, Councillor Green mentioned earlier, we will inflate the budget, so we will add inflation for major contracts and also for staff pay, and £2.3 million of savings relevant to this PAC are contributed to that 17 million of savings that Councillor Green referred to, and helping to balance the budget overall. And so that £2.3 million, some of that will be delivered from the place redesign, so we're continuing with the council redesign. The police department is in its 3rd stage of that, and we should deliver about 900,000 of savings from transforming and reconfiguring the department with the aim of improving frontline services. And we're also looking to grow our income by £400,000 by reviewing our fees and charges. So the department is quite reliant on external income, so where we have commercial charges, we were looking to increase those to remain competitive, and we always look to ensure at least full cost recovery. We're also looking to get another £750,000 from other commercial service income. That's mainly focused on securing new external funding through new schemes that will reduce reliance on council budget to invest in our highway services. And lastly, we're looking to reduce our waste disposal costs. We're always encouraging residents to throw away less and recycle more. reduce, reuse, recycle, the less we can dispose of, the more cost effective it is for the council, and of course better it is for the environment. It costs around 6 times more to process a tonne of general waste compared to a tonne of recycling. So what we do throw away, as much as that can be recycled as possible, again, better for the environment and for our budgets. So we've set a balanced budget. There are some risks, just to note. Some are existing inherent risks due to the national landscape. Some are new. So we have the ongoing risk around Hammersmith Bridge. We're awaiting funding, to be aware, from DFT and TfL for work already done. There continue to be national inflationary pressures. Inflation is coming down. It's not as low as we would like it to be. So that's impacting on our service spend, particularly around contracts or energy, maintenance, and also national public finance pressures may impact on where we've got specific grant funded services. Obviously we've received TfL funding for our highways projects, so we continue to work with our funders to make sure we can safeguard that funding going forwards. We have continued pressure on service demand and income. As I said, we rely on income quite heavily in the police department. Some of that income can be volatile, such as planning application fees, it's hard to predict. And again, we'd like to reduce waste disposal savings. You saw that we're looking to get a saving out of that. So reduce waste disposal costs, increase our savings. So there is sometimes a delay in trying to incentivise behaviour. Obviously, it relies on residents all changing their waste disposal habits. And that might take a little bit of time to affect that behavioural change. And we're also looking to purchase more waste vehicles to reduce our ongoing vehicle hire costs. But the availability of vehicles to purchase might mean that we need to hire them for a little bit longer. So I think that was the end of my presentation. Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you. Firstly, Chair, thank you, Councillor Reid, for a first-class presentation on the budget. Really appreciate it. Couple of things. Firstly, fair funding. You expressed dissatisfaction that when you get a favorable settlement, that gives some information on that. And the second thing is, Kadish, that's you. I saw that the income from business rates has actually been decreased. Is there any reason for that? We heard from the previous item on the agenda that we have a oversupply of office space. Is that connected in any way? Why is there decrease in business space?
Yeah, so if I may add, so just on fair funding, yeah, I mean, in terms of the process of it, it's a new formula. It's been kicking around now for just over a decade. So we've been aware that this change is coming and it's going to be favourable. As you see from the slides, there's a cost of just over £8 million as a result of fair funding in this year's budget. So yes, it's not where we would want to be. One of the ways in which money is redistributed through the funding formula is by adding tariff to business rates, and so that's where you see a change in business rate revenue, because more of the money gets redistributed from some councils to others.
Councillor Lloyd Harris.
Not at the moment, thank you.
Just some observations and then a couple of quick questions. Thank you very much, Councillor Reid, and also Kelly, for your presentation. So I'd like to thank officers as well for the work you've done. So it's the set budget, and you've presented the context of that. And I thank you for your clear and I think honest presentations as well. I think it's important when we're dealing with public money to be in that way. My question really is about waste disposal. The subject close to my heart, as I just remind everybody, I have trained and I'm a bespoke refuse collector, so but I've seen the dynamics of that. But also, there's a couple of meetings ago when we talked about this. We raised the point that many councils across the country aren't doing what they're supposed to do about 4 councils, for example, were temporarily cancelled their free food waste collections, we found. So I think it's a testament to everybody, actually, including the waste disposal personnel, that we do this. Because you quite rightly said it saves us money. It saves us money, doesn't it, to do it. So I just noticed, though, that I think I've been reassured in terms of the way that, because it's only a small reduction, but nevertheless it's a reduction. So we are able to continue with the service as we're presently providing at the moment with this 0.2 reduction. Is that right?
That's right. So we do closely track our colleges, so we do get charged per tonne of waste that we present for the processing. So the trend is down, the trend is continuing overall, and recycling is improving. So yes, there's no plan to change the service that we're offering. In fact, the Environment Act is mandating that we need to have the food waste collections on April. We've already got them, so we're in a good position there.
But all I just come back to that was some councils are not doing it, even though which I think is credit to us. I actually think it's that's just the right word. It's a good news story in one sense about what we're trying to do, because for residents that is key, isn't it? The way that and it can always be improved. I understand that, but I just wanted to make sure that in this committee that we're protecting that important provision. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Just to thank you very much for the detailed budget so far. I look forward to the budget council meeting. Just a couple of questions or some clarifications. Where there's mention about the 4 leisure centres, which I think is encouraging. We've got 4 of them, and it says 1 swimming pool. Now we have. I'm just assuming that 1 pool you're talking about is probably Fulham pools.
No, just the one that's council operated under our council contract.
Okay, is that Fulham pools?
No, it's up at the Phoenix.
Oh, excellent. That was the question. Why is the Phoenix not in there? So okay, that answers that. That's absolutely fine. Thank you. I appreciate that one. The garden waste. Now, there's been a lot of frustration with residents about how this was rolled out. I can understand the logic about collecting, garden waste. Totally get that. But it's always been included as part of your total bill for council tax. Now, there are clearly some people that do the right thing, allegedly, and pay the extra £90 to have this taken. Yet there's no relief within the council tax that we're already paying. Yet there's a very large percentage of the population that is still having their green recycling taken, but they're not using bags and they're not being charged separately. How are we going to deal with that? Because I'm one of the few people that was silly enough, clearly, to do the right thing and buy into this. How do we justify this? How do we sell it to residents?
I'll take that one. Thank you, Councillor. One I would add is that it's, although I'm aware people used to put their garden waste into the normal refuse, that was not really part of the service that we were meant to be delivering. So it was effectively a new service we introduced in order to help the recycling of garden waste. This brings us into line actually with what the vast majority of other London boroughs are doing and other authorities are doing. There's very few authorities which actually collect garden waste separately, free of charge. The other benefit of collecting it separately is that obviously it enables to recycle it as well. When it goes into the normal household waste, that garden waste is not then recycled. It gets burnt or with the rest of the residual waste. So that also adds to the greenhouse gases and other issues which that creates. So by offering this service and separating that out, it does come as a cost, but that cost also means that, say, we can now recycle it in a way which is sensitive to the environment as well.
I understand that, but most people put out or used to put out green recycling garden in a green plastic bag. I've been doing that for nearly 30 years. It's always been taken. And that happens with other people. I don't know any business, and obviously you say they do, that's fine. But people actually put it into the ordinary rubbish. I find that very hard to believe, but as obviously people do. But if they're putting separate bags, and you've got twigs sticking out, there's a fair chance someone's going to pick up on that is actually from the garden if they're not having a normal service.
Well, I think
what happens then?
I think the point is we've never had a facility to collect that separately. So prior to introducing this service, the refuse trucks only has one compartment at the back, which means that everything goes in there.
Okay.
Well, whatever's in that bag will go in there. What we now have is a specific separate service, which means that your general waste is collected separately, and with those who subscribe to the garden waste, we've got a separate vehicle that goes around specifically collects those bags with garden waste in, which then ensure that garden waste can then be taken to the right location to be correctly recycled. So whilst I appreciate some people might have put their garden waste always separately, it's never therefore resulted in that being recycled. Which is why, the benefits of
possibly
doing it
you're
separately.
still collecting it, so there
still
needs to be something
It was
else.
still
with a
taken.
positive statement
It
to
was
say
still
to people.
taken away. We
Yeah,
haven't
appreciate
refused
that.
to take it away.
Yes.
We haven't taken it away.
Okay.
But yes, I think people do mix it with general waste as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just got, if you could say a little bit more about some of the sort of savings proposals on for the PAC. Does the place, I think we probably covered most of this, but in terms of the place redesign, what will that actually look like? I'd be just interested in that more. It talks about in the qualities impact assessment about the review of staffing structures across the police department. So I'd be interested in a bit more about that. And then I think you may have talked about the review of fee charges, but perhaps you can just talk about the review of fee charges and the other commercial initiatives. That would be helpful.
I'm happy to answer the question about the redesign, Chair.
Yes, I've got
the best way of doing that is probably give you an example. So at the first tier, which is the Chief Executive and Executive Director, about a couple of years ago, it was probably 6 Executive Directors. We went down to 3. So that effectively cut that process down into making the savings there. That process has been cascaded down. So when the Environment and the Economy Department joined, there was about 7 or 8 people who reported to me. I brought that down to 4. So that process has been cascaded. So that's what we mean by stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So we got in, we might have had an assistant director for like transport and climate change. We've merged that. So we've actually created and that then it's going to cascade down to the next tier. Obviously that's more work for everybody, but that's what we're having to do to manage that. And we're trying to do it in a managed way so it doesn't affect those.
I'm sure this committee will continue to look at those issues. I wonder if we could just talk about the fees.
So on fees and charges, the standard sort of recommended uplift corporately is 3.8% on our charges. So it's our council policy to uplift our fees and charges every year. Like I said, we need to remain confident that we're recovering our costs. Our costs come up each year. We need to put our charges up each year as well. But particularly where we have commercial services, we are constantly benchmarking to make sure that we remain competitive. So where we think there is room to push that up more, it's not a non-resident charge, it's wholly commercial operation, we look to do that as well. A lot of our charges are set by statute, a lot of regulatory services as well, but we don't have discretion over the level of charges. We can't influence that, but we can say make savings by saving money, spending less or earning more. So we're very focused on trying to maximise income.
That's right, thank you very much. Councillor Chibok earlier, whether you want to
Councillor really said the bulk of this, that's about this budget that protects our frontline services. It's seeking efficiencies, not hollowing out services. I think that's a real positive. It's investing in the services that make people proud, that make people proud to live what they do, and that make LH exceptional place to live in. And that's what really sets us apart. And that's why when people come to this borough, as we're all busy knocking on doors, sort of all these new people sort of have just arrived, and I'll tell you they can't believe this is being delivered here as opposed to where they used to be. On the specifics of the waste efficiency saving, I was glad to not just be the only person interested in waste management. These £200,000, sort of how do you generate behavioural change? And the one thing the team and I are looking into is contamination rates, where sometimes we have a lot of well-meaning residents who collect recyclable materials in the bin quite well, and then someone throws a yogurt on top. And that's a gold mine going to mature waste. So these are all the things that we're looking at. How can we use technology? Can we have things that we put on trucks as well as bins to kind of encourage people to adopt new behaviours? You all know the regulation changes. 1 second something's recyclable, the next it's not, or vice versa. How do we also have messaging that is clear and accessible and adapts with the changing times to encourage our listeners to do the right thing? Thank you, Jack.
No, thank you very much, Councillor Joe. So, to come to the conclusion of this item, thank you very much, Councillor Reid. Thank you very much, officers, for the presentation of this year's budget, and particularly the one relating to us, the economy, arts, sports and public realm PAC. I think it's been a very useful and interesting conversation about both how, and thank you, of course, for the extensive work that's gone on from probably this time last year to now to get it into shape. And clearly there have been pressures which come along, just before Christmas when you actually find out what the settlements are, which obviously make every year make your job, less easy than it might be. I guess that we are sort of content in a sense. We sort of hear from what you said, Councillor Reid, content that we've got 3-year settlement, but clearly you'll continue to push to improve the amount of that settlement for the reasons that you outlined earlier on. I think we talked about that in terms of our questions. We had some stuff on that, on business rates, and in particular on, we're pleased to see that food waste is saving money and there's increased recycling. In fact, a lot of it was, I was happy to see that a lot of what was in the presentation is really the sorts of items that we've covered in this pack over the course of the years, this year in particular. So we certainly very, very happy to see this sort of the downward trend in terms of waste that people have, because clearly that's actually reducing the amount of waste, saves us money, and that goes towards meeting some of our environmental targets. And also that we're ahead of the game now and we've got ourselves a good position on food waste. We also had some discussion about the garden waste collection, and we often their comments there. I'm very interested to hear about the way that the service redesign is going to generate quite a lot in terms of savings, and certainly welcome all of the hard work that's gone on to make that possible, and to keep value for council taxpayers that way. I mean, there's a number of things that we're also looking forward to that are sort of highlighted in the report, such as the investment in playgrounds and open spaces that we talked about at the last meeting. So, although there are things and pressures, you have clearly been working hard to ensure that there's the room for investment and improvements in our, in that case, in our public realm, that can take us forward and improve continue to improve that for the borough. And clearly, we have some earlier items this evening, all sorts of things that are going on elsewhere to improve the life of the borough and drive it forward. So, with that, I think we've considered the budget and the fees and charges. I don't think we've got particular recommendations, but I think you've heard our comments tonight, and hopefully you will take them on as appropriate. So, thank you very much indeed for the discussion. And the last thing that we're going to say is that the members to note that the date of the next meeting is the 28th of April 2026. So, we look forward to that. And that is the end of tonight's meeting. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you for attending or in some cases watching.